When I was little, my dad used to tell me, Eric, if you just shut up and listen, maybe you'll learn something that you don't know already. And you know what? That's not exactly true, because my dad was a gentleman and he never told me to shut up. But he told me sometimes in life, sit back and listen to what other people have to say. Ask questions. Find out about them. Learn something different. Learn something that you don't know and put it to use in your own life. Welcome to Interview with Eric Martin Koppelman. Well, yes, another episode of Interview, and like I always say, my dad was a gentleman, so he never really he hinted, just be, Eric, be quiet, just listen to people before you open your mouth. Take a breather and listen to what people have to say. And I got to tell you, it certainly is or has been some of the best advice. Don't we get the best advice sometimes, from dads and moms and uncles and aunts and grandmothers and everything like that? But sometimes we're so young and we think we know it all. It's not till we get to the age I'm at now where we realize, hey, they had something on the ball there. Well, anyway, welcome to Interview. My name is Eric Martin Koppelman. As you know, I'm an internet radio broadcaster, and I pride myself on talking to amazing people, as I am today speaking with Steve Mason. Now, Steve, he's Long Island born, New York based. He's an actor, a stunt performer. This guy, let me tell you something, ladies. He is like, drool material. But anyway, New York based actor and stunt performer who's been involved in many popular and award winning shows. He's been on, check out this list. You ready for this resume? Gotham, Blue Bloods, my favorite show, Feed the Beast, The Blacklist, Law & Order, SVU, Daredevil, Orange is the New Black, Happy, and The Affair, among others. Now, his movie, the movie, which is now going to be premiering, it's going to be premiering at the Belmore Theater, and we're going to give you all the information about that. It's going to be premiering at the Belmore Theater here in Long Island, and I'll tell you more about that theater because it's an amazing place. If you've never had the opportunity to visit that theater, you're going to want it not only for the movie that Steve has written, produced, and directed and is in, but because of the theater itself. It's really a beautiful place to experience a premiere. Now, in the movie 8, Steve plays the lead actor. He plays the role of his own dad, his own father, Richard Tony Mason. He wrote, casted, and co-directed, co-produced, and executive produced the film. I want to welcome to the show Steve Mason. Steve, how are you today?
I am very well, Eric. Thank you for that introduction. I thought you were just going to keep going. I wouldn't have to say anything for the entire interview.
I like to talk. I just keep talking.
And I do too. I've been burning the candle at both ends.
Yeah.
With with the release of the film. It's been a journey. It's been a tremendous amount of work, all good stuff. But as anybody knows, nothing happens until something moves, and I haven't stopped in a year.
I remember.
I wrote the script in October of last year, and since it has had so much momentum that I haven't stopped.
I remember because you were in my studio back then, and I remember when you started talking about this, and now what was wanting to be has now become a reality. Why 8, Steve? Tell us about the concept of the movie. What drove you to do this? What drove you to the movie 8?
Okay, so I'm thankful and appreciative of you giving my resume out there. And as you know, I've been in almost all of the television shows that film in New York. And what was happening is I would die on one show and get brought back as a different character, and you can only do that so many times. So I was starting to, burn the bridge, as they say, and I was not being able to be brought back on these television shows. So I wanted to write a larger part for myself, give myself my own opportunity. And when I thought about it, I said, well, what am I going to write about? And it instantly came to me, what better story than my own? Not to say that mine is better, worse, or indifferent than anybody else's, but my journey has been quite interesting, and I think there's a lot of messages to share. So I started back with one of the things that, as we say, make us who we are. My father was a Suffolk County police officer who took his own life, committed suicide. And I, as an 8-year-old boy, would find the body after he had done this. So, there's the title for you. And We deal with a lot of socially relevant topics in the movie, and those topics are probably more socially relevant today than they were when they took place back in the early 1980s. The movie is a period. It's a short movie. It's governed by SAG, which is the Screen Actors Guild. So it's a SAG signatory project, and it's a short film. And we deal with alcoholism and depression and mild yet inexcusable domestic violence, suicidal behavior, and ultimately suicide. There's also a touch of police brutality and excessive force. Without giving the whole thing away, it's important for your viewers to know, who is this monster that I wrote a movie about? This monster was my dad, and he wasn't always a nice person, and he wasn't always a good husband or a good father. But the one thing that he had a lot of pride in was being a police officer, and the opportunity to go from a blue collar welder, that's what he did for a living before he was a cop, and he was a drinker, and there was times when he came home and ignored me if I was excited to see him as a 3-year-old, or my mom didn't cook dinner one night and he emptied the contents of the refrigerator onto the floor. My mom was very strong for a woman, especially in that time, that era, I should say, because she was strong enough to take my sister and I. My sister's a few years older than I am, and she was strong enough to take us out of the situation and say, you know what, like you need to get yourself together, because the way that it's going, you're not going to see your family anymore. Your wife and your kids are going to be gone. And so with that ultimatum, he decided he was going to stop drinking, and he was going to go after one of his passions, which was to be a Suffolk County police officer. And he went through the academy, and within 3 years, he was about ready to take his next level sergeant test, and a routine arrest went horribly wrong. The perpetrator or accused perpetrator stood up. He was handcuffed, and he stood up and went after a superior officer. And my father instinctively pushed the guy back down into his seat. And when he did, the guy hit his head on the wall. And he was probably and the stories I heard were from my father's partners and people in the department. And the guy was probably more embarrassed than he was hurt, but he instantly was threatening to sue my father, to sue the department and take his badge from him. And it wasn't the first thing that broke my dad. It was probably the last straw. And he started drinking again right from there. And it only took what was 5 years of sobriety only took about 6 weeks before he would end up killing himself.
Really?
Yeah.
Suicide is. You're not the first person today that I've spoken to,
Right,
that I haven't heard the word suicide. And I mean, it's so rampant, not only here on Long Island, but across the country.
yeah, and in the world.
It is true. And you're talking about a respected, sober officer of the law, all right, and who himself now, ladies and gentlemen, listeners that are listening, I want you to picture this now, will face jail time, and probably one of the worst things that a place that a cop could be would be in jail, all right, dealing with that type of situation for anybody, but especially someone that has put people there, and fear, anxiety. Steve, I can't imagine. Well, I can, I guess, how you felt at 8 years old. When you found your dad's body. But are you mad at your dad still? Are you mad? What feelings do you have towards your father right now? If you could say something to your dad right now after doing this movie, if you could tell your father something or say something to your father, what would that message be to him?
I believe in what I've coined this phrase is to eat your pie. And what I mean by that is I say that PIE is there's perfection in everything. And without the series of events that I went through, I wouldn't be the man I am today. And I'm quite happy with the man I am today. Now, don't get me wrong. Almost every interview I've done regarding the promotion of this film, I've been in tears. and I plan on being in tears at the premiere. And I thought I thought I had processed all of these emotions many, many years ago. But as soon as I started writing it, it was, it was so authentic and it was so heartfelt that I couldn't help but, to get emotional with it. And, the one thing that all the, I've been in therapy since I was a young, since I was 8. My mother right away was like, who knows what can happen to a child when he comes across something like that, that's so will forever be etched in stone. Again, my story is not better or worse than anybody else's. Everybody has their own journey that they go through. But for an 8-year-old to go through that, I would venture to say that most people would agree that it would be a forever changing moment right there, and something that would be concretized uh, in your mind and really etched into your soul for the rest of your days.
Absolutely.
I could never get those images out of my head, and how it happened and that day that it happened, and I never ran from it. But the one thing that most of the therapists thought I was going to have to deal with was guilt, because truth be told, I wasn't going to leave the house that morning. My sister had a Newsday paper out, and back in those days, I don't know if they still do it today, but back in those days, on the Sunday papers, you had to insert all of the advertisements, and
Yeah, it's
you
still
put
the
the
same.
Sunday
Still
papers
the
together.
same. Yep.
Oh, it's still the same.
Yep.
Somebody told me I'm doing a Newsday interview
Yeah,
this week, and I go, wow,
the
we
only
still.
thing that changed now is that there's no paper boy knocking at the door collecting with a little green book.
Right.
You know?
No more bicycle with the
Right.
rack
Yeah,
on the.
remember that? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm sorry.
No, no,
Go ahead.
no worries. So they thought that because my sister had the paper out, and he was going to take my mom. The story is that my mom had to. She worked and she was a waitress at Felice's in Patchogue. It was like a big catering hall, and she worked late. And my father was supposed to take my sister and I to do the papers, and he came, to us in the morning and said, "Look, I'm going to have you get your mother to take you." And and we were like, "Okay." And then he turned out of the room, and as he turned out, he said, "I love you." And we looked at each other like perplexed, because I guess he didn't tell us that often. So when he did say it, it was something foreign. And then because, I was like mini me of my dad, um, I said, you know what, I'm not going to go. And my sister's like, but you promised that you were going to help do the papers. I'm like, nah, if daddy's going to stay home, I'm going to stay home too. And then my mother or my sister may have begged me a little more, or my mother told me I had to go, whatever the case was. And they knew that I didn't plan on leaving. And so they were afraid, and the therapists were afraid that I was going to be very guilted. And statistically speaking, any survivor of suicide, that becomes one of the challenges to overcome. It's like, what could I have done differently? Was I not hearing the message? I could have, would have, should have. And I don't know, Eric, to be perfectly upfront with you, I don't know if it was divine intervention. I don't know if it was a spiritual guide. I don't know what it was, but I can tell you that I instantly knew that it wasn't my fault, and that there was nothing I could do about it. And if he didn't do it then, he could have done it in his car the next day or the day before. So if he had made up his mind to do it, it was going to be done. So I never had that guilt that they all feared I would. The one thing I had, my challenge was getting mad at him, because I always said, and again, from this is going from instantly. I remember at the funeral, there when a police officer dies, if you've ever seen a police,
It's
uh,
massive. Yeah. Cops
man,
everywhere. Yeah.
we had hundreds, if not thousands, or looked and felt like thousands at that age, of police officers that came in from across the country, motorcycles, people that flew in from Texas. I remember meeting all these people. They do this big salute, and the everybody is saluting him, and I haven't thought about that in a long time. The saluting, I remember. I can actually sit myself in that room right there and see my mom being heartbroken that I was saluting him every time the other officers were. So anyway,
No, I
just
understand.
again
I
another
understand.
thought that I haven't thought about, and so but anyway, the point of that was that I understood that he felt that he had to do it, and so I forgave him for it instantly. I said, he had to do what he had to do, and who the hell am I, 8 years old, to be even able to process that? Where I couldn't, I told my sister that I thought it was that he was covered in tar because the blood as it coagulated.
Turn black. Yeah.
Right, like a brownish black,
Yep.
and I had never, obviously at that age, I had never seen anything like that. So I remember saying, "Huh, you know what? I thought that something's wrong with that. I knew something was wrong, but I couldn't understand exactly what it was." And I said that he's got tar all over him.
Hmm.
And then before she could go in the room and see, my mother heard, and again, so I wasn't, my issue was getting angry at him,
Hmm.
and it took many many years before I did get angry at him.
Right.
And she had asked if I was mad. The only issue I had growing up that I was able to get mad at, and I'm glad that I was, so I could process it, was he left the door open, so to speak, to say that if life gets bad, you can always exit stage left, as we say
Hmm.
in acting, right?
Right. He made it seem like it was okay.
Right. It was a permission slip. And you know what?
It's
Life is difficult, man. Life has challenges every day. And we have to teach our children and our partners and our friends that it's okay to cry, and it's okay to feel these emotions, because this is where we grow. The story, I've told it in your studio. I was heavily addicted to drugs and alcohol for many, many, many years, and I thought that that was the way. And one of the reasons of being able to make this film, and it's odd that the number 8 keeps showing itself up, but this is going to be my 8th anniversary of being clean.
God bless. That's great.
Right, and yeah,
Congratulations on that.
tremendous. This is my other computer that I
That's
muted
okay.
the one
You're
I'm
a busy
on, but
guy. I know. You're a busy guy. It's okay. It's not yours. It's mine. I get it. I understand. No problem.
so
Helping other people.
yeah, and that's, this film, it was cathartic for me in my therapy, but it was also um a way to say, hey, you know what? Look, I'm going to put my stuff, so to speak, out there, and from a point of vulnerability, to share the story. And people have asked me, well, what do you want this film to do? And it's multi-layered. Of course, I wrote it because I wanted to write a good story and have it be a testament of my ability as a co-director and a co-producer and a writer and a leading actor. And I mean, I wore every hat there was to wear in this production. However, all those opportunities will come because it's a great film. It's a sad story, but it's a great film. And you can't put a price, if enough people see this film, that even one person, Eric, who might be contemplating taking their own life,
Might
says
not think twice.
I you know what, I thought of every no. Well, this is the thing. My dad had back then, I guess it was permissible, but my dad had insurance on a loan that they took out on the house to finish the basement. He had a loan on a car, and all those debts were resolved when he died. Now, I don't know that insurance companies will allow you to do that with suicide anymore, but back then, for whatever reason, those loans were forgiven. I clearly remember it. And so he thought of all these things, and he tried to set things up. But I would be damned if he took one moment to think that there had to be somebody who was going to discover it.
He wouldn't have thought it would have, and he probably, in his wildest imagination, wouldn't have thought it would have been his 8-year-old son.
Well, that's the point is that he obviously wasn't able to process. He didn't have the wherewithal to process that. Because if you did, that would have snapped him right back into the moment and said, "No, I'm not going to do this." Yeah, he wasn't a psychopath that had no emotion whatsoever and was like, "Well, you know what? Whoever finds it finds it." He was just so distraught and upset in his own mind and his own psyche that if somebody would have knocked on his shoulder and said, "The boy is going to be the one to find you," I have to believe that he would have cried and he would have broke down and he would have said, "I can't do this." Maybe I'm
I
wrong,
believe that.
but
I
I
believe
feel
that.
like that's something that if anything could shake you to the core. They say that there is no love like the love that you have for your child. I don't have children, I have a dog. But, you
Yeah,
know,
I have children, so I know exactly what you're talking about. And when I think about, I actually have a child who will be 9 this week.
wow.
So yeah, so
Eight.
I can't imagine doing, you know, doing something that would cause. Plus, I have a very good relationship with him, so for him to lose me in that manner,
Oh,
you know,
I was my father's favorite.
I tell you, I believe it. We're talking with Steve Mason, and what we're dealing with is the premiere of 8, which is the movie we're talking about right now. Just so you know, it's an independent short film, and what it does is it illustrates and the kinds of unspoken pain and suffering that will lead some individuals, and that could be law enforcement officers, veterans, those with substance abuse issues, to suicide. All right, and it deals with the toll that, as you can hear in this man's voice, that as you can hear in Steve's voice, he's an actor. I know Steve. I've met him in person. I've seen his work. I know what he does. And you can hear in his voice that even after all of these years, folks, it's not easy. And I applaud him and I commend you, Steve, for being able to go through what must have been hell, to be able, first off, to write it, but then to play the part of your dad. That's amazing. All right. And with this film, folks, it's dealing with relevant social topics that are so strong in everybody's mind today. Alcoholism, all right, domestic violence, be it mild or, my wife is a court officer. She works in family court. And to hear what goes on
Oh,
between, and that's the other thing, folks. If you're dealing with that type of, stuff, it affects kids, and police brutality, suicide. This is a film that gets to the heart of the matter and says, listen. That's what this show's about. Listening. Because, you might know somebody out there that might be dealing with an issue. Sometimes people that are dealing with suicide, you don't even know because you're not listening. Listen, see the film. Now, the film 8, first off, it's going to premiere Thursday, the 27th of September, 2018, here at the Belmore Theater, and that's at 222 Pettit Avenue, located in Belmore, New York. The premiere goes from 7:30 to 9:30. There's a whole schedule, and we're going to put that in the show notes here so that you guys can check that out. As I said before, the Belmore Theater is a 350-seat, and it's a historic theater. It opened in 1918, which is a beautiful theater, and it also hosts the annual Long Island Film Festival. And get this, it's the last standing single movie theater in Long Island. So here's what because nowadays you go there and it's like, what movie you want to see? You got 50 of them to choose from.
right.
Let me tell you something. With these movie theaters, Steve, too, with the recliners, I went to a movie. It was like a 3-hour movie. By the time I got up out of the reclining seat, my legs were numb. I had no blood going to my legs.
I fallen asleep in some of those.
I'm telling you, it's crazy. I'm going to what I'm going to do, folks. Also in the show notes, if you're listening to the interview right now, I'm going to give you a link so that you can check out the trailer. Now, Steve, if they don't go, if somebody, because I know people will be listening to this all, let's say, throughout the world. So, can they? Is there a way to be able to purchase?
Yeah, I was just actually I have.
Please.
If you could see me right now, I'm in front of 4 different computer monitors right now. What I'm going to do is I am going to send you the link right now that you could probably just put in the notes.
Right.
I'll send you the link for people that are local that want to. We've had dozens of donated tickets, which is just amazing. So we've been giving away to people who are basically depressed artists and anybody dealing with domestic violence, anybody dealing with an AA or NA that really can't. The tickets are $25 and the copy of the movie is $25. We're not talking about big money, but there are some people that really that need to see it that don't have the money. So we're trying to help reach as many people as we can. And I'm just asking for it's the honesty factor. If you can afford the $25, you help supporting a great cause. A portion of the money goes to the Suicide Prevention Lifeline, and we're trying to do the right thing. But if somebody can't afford it, then we still want you to be able to get the message. And they can email me. You could put clevermediacorp@gmail.com. They can reach me direct. and my people will get it to me, and
No,
I'll make sure that, we're going to have people that are going to try and beat us, Eric. That's just the way of life, but I
shame
don't
on
care.
them.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I don't care.
Karma's going to kick you in the ass. Don't do that. Listen, it's clever with a K, by the way, folks. It's K, not a C. So if you're going to spell out clever, which is very clever, so it's with a K. But once again, Steve, what can I say? I keep saying because I'm usually not at a loss for words, but it's what you dealt with as a child and what you're doing now to help other people is fabulous. So, folks, this is more than just entertainment. Okay, this is more than just a movie. This is a man's life. This was a Suffolk County police officer, as far as I'm concerned, doing his job and trying to protect the individuals that he's sworn to have protected, and it turned on him, and for whatever reason that he pulled the trigger or whatever, for whatever reason, okay, maybe out there will be just one person. Maybe you're thinking of it right now and you're saying, hey, wow, you know what? Not only do I want to see this movie, but I got to show this movie. I got to get this movie over to whoever might be in your life right now that you might say, hey, that little voice in your head says, hey, send it to Joe, send it to John, send it to Shirley, whoever, send it out.
Like coworker, somebody that that might be struggling, that it might help. And the flip side is, not only is it a great message and a great story, but it's a great film. And we've had a couple of celebrity reviews on it already. Local to Long Island is Ralph Macchio, the Karate Kid.
Oh, what did Ralph say? He liked it?
So Ralph, in his words, quoting him, was it was nice storytelling, instinct, and skills, and that the themes of struggle with post-traumatic stress disorder and substance abuse, I'm reading it right from his quote,
right,
and the effect in the family was evident and one of importance. It certainly shines a light on the very serious and sad and unfortunate theme. I enjoyed the film very much. Much congratulations to you guys. Ralph Macchio, the Karate Kid, Cobra Kai. And then also we had Dominic West from The Affair, and from 300, and from The Wire.
Oh, I love The Wire. I love that. When it stopped, I was like, where'd it go?
Yeah. So he played McNulty on The Wire.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
And
those of you that don't know about The Wire, that if you have a chance to check that out, I know they came back now with a new series based on something else similar to the concept of The Wire, but it was actually diving into the families and behind the scenes of this particular detective and his life in general, not only on the job but as in personal as well. And I thought it was great. Yeah. So and that's exactly basically what you're doing now. You're taking this and you're putting it out there and sharing your story, your dad's story, your mom's story, your sister's story with the world. With the world. That's what you're doing.
And Dom, really quick, Dominic did say, he said, I thought it was beautifully shot, nicely directed, with great performances, extremely poignant, almost unbearably so. He said, I found the writing, like the acting, to be deceptively simple, unadorned, and quietly incredibly effective. So, I mean, those are some pretty strong words to use to describe it. And because I have so many things in front of me, what was I doing? Oh, I was getting you the links for everything. And here we go right here. And here we go right here. I'm going to send this to you, to your direct message.
So everything will be in the show notes, folks. Once again, Steve, if they want to reach out to you, what's the best way to find you? Is it as far as social media, or what's the best way?
You can reach me. Either my website is I am Steve Mason, like you're not, but I am stevemason.com, or clevermedia@gmail, or Steve at IamSteveMason. I want your listeners to know, and to the listeners that hear this, that I'm not a doctor, I'm not a psychologist, and I don't have every answer in the world, but I'm a damn good listener. And if somebody needed to reach out, between me and my team of people, we won't let you go unheard. Even if it's something that you say, you know what, I'm not going to bother them. Bother away. You know what, this film was meant to draw the community together. And if it took something so tragic as losing my dad's life to better that community and bring people closer together, then maybe that's the purpose it was supposed to serve. I don't know all the answers, but I know that something good can come out of something bad all the time.
Absolutely. Steve Mason, everybody. Steve, look forward to seeing 8. I'm going to, I want to get a copy of it. And also, I don't know whether I'll be able to attend the premiere or not. I'd like to. I have to check my schedule. But otherwise, folks, listen, if you can't attend it here on Long Island, you can pick up a copy of the movie. I implore you, folks, watch the movie, listen to what's being said, get behind the story. You never know whose life you might be saving. Steve Mason, I want to thank you so much for joining me today.
Eric, thank you so much for having me. I truly appreciate it. It means a lot.
Absolutely. And you mean a lot. So we'll talk again. Thanks, Steve.
Absolutely. Thank you.